Welcome everybody. Welcome back to Techhnolyze. It's been a while. It's been a little bit. And we ended in episode 18 on a very it's not as cliffhangery, but it's like a very tense point in the narrative, and I do think that this was the beginning of the end of the series, not just because we only have 4 episodes left to go, but also because this seemed to be like the peak of tenseness, right? Kano just killed his supposed mothers, but also grandmothers, right? Like, he said something along the lines of like they birthed his father and then they mated with him and birthed him, which is like, I'm like, what? I'm sorry, I didn't even peek that the first time I watched it, but I rewatched parts of it in preparation of going into this episode, because I was like, I need to actually be at the top of my game of actually knowing where everybody, at least the most important people, are. Yeah, Ichse and the dog are actually about to maybe go to the surface, which we finally, at some point in time, I mean, it was kind of confirmed a couple of episodes ago, but we finally have like the clear confirmation that the place that Yoshi came from is actually above ground and that we are underground here. I still don't know how it works with the light and whatnot, but we know now that we are underground. We are kind of enclosed in this little, like, almost terrarium kind of style world, and everything is going to shit. I think Shinji wants to kill Kano. Onishi, I don't know what his plan is. I think he wants to stay down here and he actually wants to try and save something of the city, right? And recreate the stability. We have Ran, who is in the middle of the plaza at the monument, kind of gathering people through, I guess, sending signals through like the city. I know, like, we know that Onishi's, like, the city talking to him was mostly just the 3 grannies basically having conversations, and that kind of being in like almost a collective unconscious kind of deal, seeping through and into people who have Techhnolyze like technology, right? Like, and maybe like not even everybody who has those Techhnolyze things, because Ichse, I think, did never really hear the city talk, although he might have had visions as well, and that's kind of like the same or similar. So I don't know that for sure. One thing that I can really say is, and before we go into the end, it really fascinates me how eerie this series is throughout, right? It's not just very mysterious and confusing and always keeping information behind the bay to kind of just like reveal it at an opportune moment, or never reveal it and let us kind of like make up for the lack of information. But it also, despite actually being very good and kind of subtly directing every one of us to kind of get a feeling of how it's like, right? The stuff with the surface, we kind of call that in the middle, or almost even just like the beginning half of the series, that there's like, it almost seems like it's underground and whatnot, despite it never being explicitly mentioned. And a couple of other concepts where it's like, hey, I somehow, like, by just thinking about it and by just like trying to wrap my head around it, I kind of gotten very close to the actual truth of what the narrative is later on, revealing what's real, right? What's true, what's actually the case. But also, you do have that eerie feeling throughout the entire series that is just seeping in the directional choices, right? And the general shots that are taken and the color palette that is used in this series, which I think the only series that has come close to this kind of imagery in the way it presents itself and in the way it's just like so very eerie and unsettling in every way, is actually Lane, which supposedly, I think, was a huge inspiration for this. So that makes perfect sense. I still don't know what the actual final conclusion of this is gonna be. I still don't know what Kano actually wants. Like the grannies were saying, like, yes, he just wants a bigger playground. He just wants to go up there and do whatever he wants. But that's like very vague language, right? What does whatever he wants mean? What does he want? What does the metaphor of a bigger playground mean specifically? How does that playground look like, right? The dog was saying something about like the class at some point in time being able to go upstairs, but we've never witnessed that. We don't know how it's being granted and how it works, right? So there's always this vagueness to everything that people are saying. And even if we wanted to ask for more information, the 3 women which were able to maybe possibly give it are now dead. So I guess we have to find out ourselves. But let's jump into the episode. Let's see what awaits us in this episode 19 of Techhnolyze, and let's hope that it is going to be an interesting one, right? I do want it to be an interesting one. I do want it to be a satisfying conclusion, maybe as well. That would be a really cool thing. But let's get into it. 3. You remember how we do that, right? Like after the intro, we're gonna sync up. First frame. It's a beautiful shot too, looking up at the monument. All right. Ooh, train tracks. Are we going to go outside? Is that the first thing we're doing? Ooh, we had the train tracks in the beginning of the show, right? I wonder if that was kind of like a foreshadowing of that. Right? It's like just us like being carried by the train towards the outside, and this is just like subtle foreshadowing, actual subtle foreshadowing. Ooh, the obelisk is okay. So is that a problem? Okay. Could you rebuild an obelisk like that? Alright, so it's limited though. It's very interesting how we don't know that much about Techhnolyze. And that's information based, right? Because he doesn't have all the information of the city, basically, with the obelisk. Wonder what he's thinking, because he was kind of like a friend of Yoshi, right? Maybe he was even like another surface dweller like him. But I'm not sure, right? I'm not sure if that's the case. Doc, you're kinda creepy sometimes, not gonna lie. I couldn't even read that title properly. Ooh. Red light. Have we arrived? As always, it's so hard to read Ichise's mind. It's like a lost child kind of deal. Although he's become more and more mature over the course of this. Shit. Must be like the first time he ever sees the sun, which is unreal. I mean, even for us, right? This is the first time we are seeing the sun in this series. The whole color palette is different. It's really cool how we still stand on like the ground that is similar to what you used to from down below. The cicadas. Some nuclear power plants. I do wonder how he feels, right? What effect the sun has on him, right? Because like when you're inside for a lot of your life and suddenly the sun is kind of burning down on you, I don't even know if like your eyes are used to it, if you're getting lightheaded or whatnot. It's gonna reject him because of it. No? Okay. Silence recedes. What does it all mean? We don't know anything about the world out there. Not a thing. An angel with head and arms chopped off.
聴者だ。そこへ行けばなんとかなるのか。さあ。さあだと。いい加減に言ってるわけじゃない。そこに行く以外ないんだ。本当だ。
I love how much agency is gained over, like, he still doesn't have a lot of agency, but how much agency is gained over the course of this series is crazy. Oh, the blue sky is almost it's almost oppressive, right? Where do you feel the heat? Yeah. He isn't used to that. Their skins are probably white as fuck, right? That is the question. She was clearly the first one who get through to him, right? Interesting. These shapes behind the window, right, that you can't clearly see. You know somebody is there, but you don't have any concept of the shape of these people, right? You only know they're humans as well, right? Flowers. That caught his eye. Wait, why did it turn gray? Is it like a metaphor or is it an actual thing? It's not normal for a flower.
人はどこにいるの？さあ、どこだろうな。ひょっとしたら
ここにはもう人間なんて一人もいないのかもしれない。
Question is, what the fuck happened up
そ
there?
のうちわかるさ。
Each is getting a little bit angry as well, beyond like just like fighting for his life out here in the heat.
もう少しだ。多分な。
Ooh, thunder. Thunder looms.
ねえ、あれ。
久しぶりですね、崎村くん。鷺沼さん。何をしているのです？ええ。わかる範囲で構いません。答えてください。庁舎に向かっているところで。それが第一義の目的ですか？はい。ならば私も同行しましょう。
So it wasn't a hallucination.
崎村くんの目的がそこに。
It's like the voices in your head. Maybe it is. Maybe it's actually a projection or something. It doesn't feel real, right? Because it switches places. It's like eerie and weird.
さあ、行きましょうか。
The fuck is happening here? Holy shit. Mysterious to the end. But they seem to be able to see her. Or it. Whatever it is. Puppet or a robot or whatever you want to call it. Or maybe just a projection. Empty streets. Oh, I mean, not empty. There's a person. Just looks very vacant everywhere. Like everybody's just...
わかったか。ここにはもう人間らしい人間はいないんだ。
Ooh, okay. Not fully human. What does that mean? What happened to them? By the way, if I'm shifting around a bit, it's because I hurt my back a couple of days ago. Not very comfortable, but you know. Only one glass of water brightens the world. So cryptic. And we do have a little statue that looks like the monument. This looks simultaneously desolate and futuristic.
ルクスにおけるテクノライズの需要はどの程度？
こうした形式的な質問には後でいくらでもお答えします。私たちにも事情があるんです。どうか話を聞いてください。
形式は形式であるがゆえに形式なのです。例外はありえません。
緊急を要するんです。
ルクスにおけるテクノライズの需要はどの程度あるのですか？そのうちあなたの手術によるものはどれくらいの割合を占めますか？
崎村さん、このところずっと待機でしてね、手が空いてるんです。 崎村さんの机はそのままにしてありますから。
He got a haircut. What the fuck?
今日ルクスから戻ってきたんです。
そうでしたか。
吉井君を覚えていますか？
ああ、吉井君。彼は元気ですか？
彼は私が殺したんです。わかりますか？彼は私が殺したんです。私が殺したんだ。
No, no
お
emotion,
疲れ様でした。
no empathy, no nothing. If he was one of them, like what? Why does he?
他の人間を殺したことがありますか？もし殺したとすれば、それは何人ですか？
彼らは地上に攻め上がると言っています。あなたたちにとっても無関係なことではないんですよ。
彼らが何をしようと無駄なことです。
And why is that?
我々が彼らに対して何かするのも無駄なことです。そもそもテクノライズは環境管理システムたるオベリスクのない地上では活動不能か制限が加えられるはずです。そこの彼のように。
ラフィアの供給が止まっていることはどうなんですか？
ラフィア、確かにそのようですね。ですが我々はもはやそれを必要としていません。ルクスからの輸入は単に形式的なものにのみとどまっています。
No dependence.
すべてに優勢な遺伝子を持つ我々に肉体欠損はありえませんし、仮にあり
Only
えたと
dominant
して
genes.
それをどうにかしようとする者はいません。ラフィアは我々にとって無用の長物なのです。手足を失い、それを仮の手足で埋め合わせたとして何になるのです。その手で何を握りしめ、その足で何を踏みしめるというのです。わからない。我々にはラフィアもテクノライズの思想もまるで無縁のものです。
Yes.
人類は老いたのです。あとは緩慢な死を迎えるだけです。
ただ死を待つだけのあなたたちにはわからないかもしれません。ですがテクノライズは人間の可能性を無限に。
鏡は思考力を増大させる。ひとたび繰り返す。鏡は思考力を増大させる。鏡は思考力を増大させる。
This makes no sense to me, but okay.
鏡は思考力を増大させる。
So this is a society which is basically waiting for its death. And humans who seemingly don't have empathy with one another or don't care. They're detached. There's so many questions, right? What happened? Why are they like this? I mean, it clearly changed over time, right? Because Doc didn't necessarily expect it. Right? And there's like a clear disconnect between their society and the one in Lucas.
休むか。
Always with the light and shadow shots on the face. What's with that man? It's very interesting how they're all kind of like fuzzy. They don't have a really clear shape.
どこかで会ったことがあるような気がした。
I Like the resolution isn't loading in, right? Like you can't define him or can't really sharpen your image on them. Flower budding, people being shot. A history documentary about how this happened. That looks like Lucas a lot. It's also weird how we're literally like, it seems like our only point of contact is kind of a weird, very non-industrial countryside town. As opposed to like the heavy industry of like what we see in Lucas. The fuck is happening? Like all of this is not real. This is so confusing and weird. I don't even know what to say about it. As probably in half of this entire series, holy shit. Very similar to what we see here, right? With the flower blooming. Here, the flower is actually almost wilting. Though we know it turns like into an apple or a fruit or some sort. And again, we have that imagery with everything being fuzzy, not sharp, right? Not in focus. And we'll still have that theme of like, I want to see you again. Right. Let's talk about it, shall we? It's not gonna take long probably this time. I'm sorry about that, but it is what it is. Like I said, I really like the imagery here because we finally kind of recognize that has been subtle foreshadowing all this time. Where the train tracks lead, where do they lead on to the outside, right? But love this shot where we're like just like it's like he's resting, he's sleeping, right? And then we have like his sleeping face, and slowly it kind of brings us back to reality, because I feel like seeing him sleep, right, is us being outside and not being in his perspective, right? Because we're looking at something from like the ground below us, and we're looking at him from the side, because he's lying on his side technically in like the sleep mode. And then but we turn around, and as soon as like the world shifts to match his point of view, we're back in his reality, which is really cool. And we explain a little bit more about like the Techhnolyze stuff, that that like depends on the power, on the obelisk as a source of power apparently, and also as a source of information, which is super interesting. We didn't know that, related to their movement. And she's bringing that onto his Techhnolyze stuff, where she's like, I modified it in a way to actually be able to take in some limited information, which enables you to still move them, right? Like our limbs would work in reality, right? That we can take in the information where a limb is in the room without us actually looking at it, right? It's not disappearing from our from our tactile perception, right? All of that, right? We know where the limb is at any time. Like, not as precisely, right? You find people who are very proficient in stuff like climbing or parkour, for example, have probably a way better sense of where exactly their limbs are and where their body is in space, as opposed to somebody who's just sitting at home at their desk, right? And doing, I don't know, playing video games as a hobby. So there's that. We have him, who is originally from the surface, the dog, who is from the class, and Ichse, who is from down below. I do like that we do have all of these, I would almost like to say, non-manipulative shows of comfort and affection by her, that she actually expresses, doesn't express regret, but says she is sorry that she potentially hurt him by saying that, for example, his mother's cells are basically in the limbs, and is trying to explain to him why she said that, because she knew that if she said that, he would treat them more with more care than he would if she didn't say that, because at that point in time he was basically like mentally almost a toddler, right? A traumatized child who been through a lot of shit and is just reacting to things with anger and aggression and fear, rather than just thinking about things and interacting with people. It was barely possible to even talk to him back then. So it's very interesting how, and I mean, I don't want to approve of that, because she clearly not only showed him affection and told him lies, but also slept with him to possibly evoke that affection from him, and that feeling of just like at least partially listening to her and not raging out at her and all of these things, because I guess she needed that in order to develop her stuff. But I do genuinely believe that at this point in time, after we've been through so much, and after she clearly showed that like there's a lot of shit going on that she herself didn't foresee, that she didn't want to happen, her own dreams, her own plans and whatnot, whatever they specifically were, or at least like her desire to be recognized by the class and be taken back into them through use of her Techhnolyze technology, that she wanted to show off and be like, look, it's possible. Each is kind of like the prime model, the prototype for what the future is supposed to hold in her mind, in her idea, and her being rejected there and not knowing what to do anymore, right? Almost being like dejected and nihilistic, to the point of nihilism at that point in time, where he dragged her back out of that. So we have a relationship that established itself from there, and now she does actually genuinely care for him. I mean, she always liked him, but in the beginning of the story it was more like her pet experiment kind of deal, right? And now it's more like she also has seen him grow in mindset, in communicability, in agency, in all of these things, right? Develop as a human being and develop a sense of self and a sense of agency, a sense of like desire and motivation. And I think like it's also important that she talks about that in this point in time, that she's like, look, I'm sorry that I lied to you, but at that point in time, like, I mean, obviously it's an excuse to a degree, but she's like, at that point in time, I just wanted to get you to treat the technology well and don't reject it. So I said that to you. I do wonder if that is like a repeat of that she's now saying that there's like part of her cells in there, or if she's just saying that, if that's true, right? And she's just saying that, being like, look at that, at this point in time, the lie that I used back then actually became reality in this specific case. And she kind of sees it as kind of almost a romantic kind of deal. I find it very interesting also in that regard that obviously we did see multiple times that she had affection for him, but in the beginning we didn't know, like when she originally was intimate with him, we didn't know if that's just pure manipulation or if it's more than that, right? She has some kind of weird, a twisted sense of like intimacy with whoever she experiments on or whatever. But at this point in time, there is like attachment, because also he helped her in those phases where she was like distraught and had her absolute low point in the story. So her later on asking what is like that girl at the monument, right? The seer of Gabe. What is she to you? I wonder if that is more than mere curiosity, and if it's maybe just like a hint of jealousy or a hint of like just like I'm not sure if you're like in love with her or if there's something going on there, and I want to have that reassurance about that. So that's a very interesting thing to think about. As always, the cinematography is done really well, right? Close-up shot of her leaning on him, right? Showing like the trust, and also just like opening the gates and having the blinding light and the sun and the cicadas, the traditional like cicadas in summer. Almost completely clear blue sky, but it seems very oppressive, and I do think that's because, on the one hand, like because we have the dark blues up above, which kind of like feels like it's kind of pushing you down despite being very bright and very whatever, but also because maybe also on my personal sense, because I do feel like oftentimes when it's really full summer and it's super hot and the sun is burning down and the sky is so clear, bright blue, right? Like that, like in a sour color basically, that it almost like, because it's too bright for you and you don't really want to look up too much, because it's kind of just like forcing you to kind of tense up with all of your face and try to kind of limit the amount of light that's going into your eyes. It feels very oppressive. It feels very like I don't want to be here too long, because it's kind of just right. It's pressing me down in like almost in a heat kind of way, because you also feel the heat of the sun on your skin, and it's like slowly driving up your body temperature. You start sweating, right? You start being like exhausted. You start like being exhausted as well from like the muscles cramping up to reduce the amount of light going into your eyes, all of that, right? So it feels oppressive to me. Cool shot with the contrast of like the shade to the light that he's standing in. Again, I said that during the reaction. It's great that they kept up the same kind of like ground plates that they have in Lucas. So we do have almost like symbolically, it's almost like the ground that he's standing on is metaphorically or symbolically connected to Lucas, right? This is where he comes from, right? His feet are firmly planted in Lucas, but his entire body and his face and his field of vision goes up towards like the open world that he, for the first time ever, is accessing, kind of. All of these environmental shots are very cool, especially since a couple of them are really tilted and it feels like eerie. Once again, eerie, but a different kind of eerie than Lucas itself. Like, it's like Lucas has desert vibes, desolate vibes, like industrial age dystopia vibes, while this here has more like decayed countryside vibes, right? Like vibes of desolation in a different way, right? we're going through weird like scanners that and we hear strange messages repeated on the radio, almost like there was a nuclear fallout and nobody's here anymore. In the beginning, we don't even know if there's anybody here. Bro is almost like in a trance. He's like, I don't know, like, and he just is like, dude, don't fuck with me, right? We need to get this done. And he's like, yeah, look, dude, I'm not just like being whatever. I'm being serious. I just don't know what we can do here if we're gonna have any kind of success. And the washed out colors of like of Lucas are swept away by like a more colorful palette of like the countryside here, like this high summer countryside. What is she to you? Yeah, we have that. Doc's like almost over his shoulder asking him, and then we have the focus pull. And he doesn't know, right? He doesn't. Again, like I know I said that in the reaction, like the shapes of people, but I didn't expect that to actually be the case when we go past people in broad daylight without any like glass between us or whatever. But it is, right? Everything that we do is literally like kind of isolated from the world. We can interact with nature, we can interact with everything, but all the people around there, like machines or zombies or whatever. I find it very interesting that he like touches the flower, and at first I thought like him touching the flower was like kind of almost like making it wet because he was sweating or something. But and we have that weird shadow of the dude who probably owns the house coming up, which like he must be like outside of the frame, I think, right, looking at that. Or maybe it's just like a presence that he feels there and that's what it's supposed to express. But like Doc is looking in that direction, so I think it's like a guy who's just looking at that. And he's coming up and he's like touching it and suddenly it turns gray, so it almost feels like the flower is artificial, it doesn't exist. And he's like shocked, he's like, what the fuck is happening here? But we just move on from that. This line of like lamps, by the way, like street lamps being on in broad daylight is very weird to me, but even like that line of lamps kind of reminds me of like stuff like Lane, or also Madoka with like the movie, if you know, you know. And you have like a clear line where we go into, maybe there aren't any human beings left in this place anymore. What do you mean? And I was like, you'll see. And he's just like really struggling with the heat and whatnot. With like thunder coming up that's actually then not being there anymore a second later. And we see that like weird creepy doll child kind of thing. And all like the interactions that we have like with these government people or whatever is through speakers and like empty chairs and whatnot. It's almost like everything up here is unreal. And I do wonder if that's actually be taken at face value, or if that's supposed to be something that just uniquely displays the point of view experience of each say and or Doc. Like if that's like that they feel like almost everything is unreal, and as such we want to find a way to artistically express that to the viewer, or if it's like something that is actually that way. Either way, we have a lot of like empty spaces, right, where there's not a lot of hustle and bustle. Everybody who walks past us is kind of like very weirdly out of focus and like almost like they're painted in a different art style kind of deal. We have people going past us and suddenly they disappear. There aren't any people anymore who are fully human, but I don't know what that means, right? Later on we talk about Raffia and how they don't need it anymore because they only have people with like dominant genes, but I don't know what that means, right? Like I literally don't know what that means. And most people, I mean, there's like somebody who doesn't have a limb, but like a bunch of people just walking by normally, they have limbs and everything, so I do wonder what that means. Also very interesting how we kind of just put the shadow on the other side of the road and we're just walking in the light, just very close to the shadow, and then there's just like this imposing government building right above us, which just like very, very like square architecture. We have like the light on the outside, and the atrium is very, very low light, very like shadowy, but there's like light coming on through the window on a red chair. The red chair, like the red sofa is standing, looking right at like a miniature of the monument that we have in Lucas. And then we have this here who looks like some weird kind of gene facility in a Deus Ex game or something, right? Like scientific in a way almost, with all of these circles up above. Too structured, too like clinical, almost like a lab or something. And I like the very tiny amount of light shining onto the mouth and the nose of the puppet while the eyes remain in the dark. It's a very sinister vibe, a very like artificial and weird vibe, where it's like you get the impression that we only see a very, very much a glimpse of the people here and what they are about. I also wonder what this is. Like, is this like sugar cubes? It looks like fucking sugar. No, it's not, right? It's like with grapes and whatnot, and there's a chair up above, and she's looking at the chair, but there's no one on the chair, and we talk to a shapeless voice. Routine questions, and there's no way around it. You can't appeal to emotionality because it doesn't exist. And they just want to know about like Techhnolyze and Lucas and whatnot. And then we have that like bureau, which is kind of like just almost like bureaucracy, basically, just like desks and chairs which are all uniform in the same way, and we're just writing our paperwork on that. And his desk was left exactly like it was when he left this place and went down to Lucas, which is super weird. And he's like, I killed Yoshi, and he's like, I'm sure you've done a fine job of it. Almost like there's nothing bad about that, right? Almost like he doesn't understand what he wants to say with that on an emotional level, the gravitas. Zoom in on her, like with the half of her face, like more than half of the screen being showing her face, and only half of her face, right? Mainly her eyes. And she's back into her like her black latex suit, which I guess she had under the lab coat. He's being asked stuff, right? How many people have you killed? And he's just standing up, and we don't hear his answer and whatnot. This is very important here, this conversation. They're planning to attack above ground. If they do, you won't remain unaffected by it. And he's like, no matter what they do, it will be meaningless. Also, it's equally meaningless for us to do anything to them. To begin with, people with Techhnolyze limbs should become either completely or partially incapacitated above ground, where there's no obelisk which acts as their control system, just like him, right? And we point that out, and Doc has confirmed that previously. What about the fact that the supply of raffia has stopped, right, from Lucas? And they're like, seems to be the case, but we no longer need it. It's only a formality, right? Like maybe just to make it appear to Lucas and everybody down there that they need it, right? Like almost like it's a thing to keep everything down there in order for them to not notice that something has changed up above. We who have only dominant genes will never suffer from bodily damage. Right, so I guess they kind of opted for gene modification. I think Yoshi said something along those lines, right? They opted for gene modifications or something similar. Even if we did, we wouldn't try to do anything about it. And we have like quick flashes of flowers, I think, right? And like, okay. Red flower. It's not a spider lily though, right? Interesting. Raffia is quite useless to us. And that's a shock to her. What good is it to compensate for lost limbs with fake ones? What are you doing to grab with such an arm? And what are you going to stand firmly on with such a leg? I don't understand. This is weird, right? Like, I mean, even if you have a fake leg, you can stand, right? If you don't have one, you can't. If you grab something with your fake arm, you can still grab it, right? It's a mechanical thing. I mean, obviously, maybe he means it on a feeling level, right? Right? What happens if I stand on a fake leg? I wouldn't feel anything from it, right? But this is so weird. It's like almost like in the beginning of the series, I was like very like I had trouble understanding the people of Lucas, but it seems like the people of Lucas are way more understandable to me than the people up here. Raffia and the idea of technologization are completely alien to us, yes? And you are completely alien to me, because technologization, Raffia, that would be more or less alien to me than actually what's happening right in front of my eyes over here. Mankind has grown old. The only thing left is slow death. So it's like nihilism almost, right? They're like, it doesn't matter, right? We just like, if we die, we die. If we lose limbs, we lose limbs, right? It just happens. Who the fuck cares, right? There's no motivation, right? And I do wonder what that is about, right? Where it comes from, right? Why, I mean, humanity, as humans, they exist and they have motivations. They want to live. They want to be productive. They want to improve themselves. They strive for creativity and productivity and all of these things. So where is that lack of that? Why like that part of humanity that we said earlier in the episode was lost to these people? What became of it? Maybe it's hard for you to understand since you're going to just sit and wait for your deaths. But technologization infinitely expands the possibility that mankind has, and he's like, I'm listening to you. A mirror improves the ability to think. He repeats it once. He doesn't repeat it once. He repeats it like 5 times. So why? Like, it makes no sense. It's gibberish. Looking at yourself improves the ability to think. You think so? Maybe self-reflection, yes, but those people aren't really all that self-reflected, I feel, right? Or maybe they're too self-reflected. Lane vibes. Once again, lane vibes. Infinite lane vibes. Sunset shots of different people, right? All of them out of focus. At the, like, staring at walls. Sitting at desks, doing nothing. It's very interesting how we have that like weird cinema thing here, where it's like almost like the history of what happened, right? People are getting like shot at the pole, right? Like mass executions. People are being like exhumed, I guess, or maybe burned. I don't know. This almost looks like it's happening in Raffia over here, where it's like people in hoods shooting other people. Like people feeling like this just like evokes images of like losing your job or losing your purpose or being just like downtrodden. These are like, feel like politicians or rich industrial people, and suddenly we have like that hole, and suddenly we have the table, which reminds us a lot of the table that we had down at the city council with the organo and whatnot. And we have in the middle of that we have the obelisk. It's like almost feels like this is the planning stages of how Lucas was made. And then we have like somebody raising a gun, almost like a revolution, workers' revolution or some shit. And we have like families being held at gunpoint and being, I guess, shipped down to like maybe they're being shipped to like the underground, or they're going and people need to hold them back to actually make sure that like the train doesn't get too full, right? That like need to restrict people and then they can go the next time, right? Stuff like that. But I think it looks differently. Like it looks like they're being forced to go underground, basically. And we have all those like nuclear reactors. We have like something that seems like an insane like light blitz reaction kind of deal, like some massive spike of energy or something, right? And we have like industrial planning, people like building up the monument, people like existing in the city, and we get these flashes here, right? And suddenly the film kind of just burns out, whatever that means. We have that like little moment of her taking his hand, whatever that's supposed to symbolize, be that a gesture of comfort for herself, right? Or be that a gesture of comfort to him who is experiencing these things for the first time. Maybe she knows a little bit more about everything. But I do feel like she doesn't either, right? Because she only had a very rudimentary idea of what's up there. And maybe all of what she knew kind of stemmed from Yoshi. I don't know if it did. But I know she's been part of the class, so maybe she got some information based on that limited information. But also it could be that she doesn't. she didn't, and all she got was that conversation we had in the middle of the series with Yoshi, where he was talking a little bit about it. But it's been so long that I have no idea. All right. That's been Techhnolyze episode 19. Another fucking banger. I don't know if it's a banger or not, but it sure as hell is absolutely crazy. I'll say we make a quick cut, and then we're gonna get our asses into Techhnolyze episode 20. Would be the best in my opinion. We still have barely any answers, but I mean, I guess we rarely ever do. But you know, I'm still good to go. We're gonna go for another one, and I'll see you in a second. All right, welcome back to Techhnolyze episode 20. Let's get ourselves into that, shall we? Gonna start in 3, 2, 1. Just notice this is one of the last times we actually hear the intro. I mean, we still have 2 times, but still. I kind of really gotten used to it. Like the beat of it, the cadence. I've had some food. Let's get back into this madness. Ooh. You can hear the birds in the back. Hades, okay. Ooh, Hades is... That is an interesting title. Hmm.
私は勝手に思ってた。クラスの人間は地上にいつでも帰ろうと思えば帰れる。
But
本当は地上にいるべき人間なのだから。
by right.
あんたを送る。俺の仕事は終わった。
私はテクノライズこそが人間という種が次の種に進化する手段だと思ってた。
I always thought that was kind of her mindset.
地下で私たちが必死にあがいている間に地上の人間はとっくに生き残ることを諦めていた。
Given up on surviving. Sorry, I'm just adjusting the screen a little bit.
ここは死んだ人間が来るところだ。
A place for dead people.
生きている人間なんていない。
ただ安楽に人という種が黄昏れていくのをじっと待っているだけ。
Why are they even eating though?
確かにここは黄泉の国だわ。
俺は帰る。あんたはどうする？
Hades.
私ももう死んでいるのよ。
You're already one of the dead? I don't feel that. I don't 100% remember what Hades is, by the way. I think it's like the underworld, right, in Greek mythology. So, it makes sense, right? It's just the souls passing by, wait for their turn to be taken down the river Styx. To wonder though why they keep their routine, you know what I mean? Like why they don't just waste away and starve themselves. I guess the path of least resistance is the one where you don't starve yourself. Because starving involves pain, it involves agony, right? In a way. So it's easier to do routine, right? Just waste your life away. It's very interesting because I do feel a lot of our modern day feels like this. Like if you don't pay attention, if you don't live your life consciously, you can just waste your life away and accept that one day you will die and you're just like, I'll just do the same thing every day. Ooh.
地下に行くんですって。
A memory of Yoshi.
僕が行きたかったな。前から希望を出してたのに。
So you did apply for it.
僕も行きますよ。絶対。
Yeah, they have a life.
崎村さん、なんで断らなかったんです。地下に行きたいなんて僕だけかと思ってました。
行きたくなかったんだ。最初は。
Is that like, does he have a limit, like a battery or something? You too, it seems. To a degree.
さてどうだろうね。ただ過去だけを思い出してここで日がな座っていることを生きていると言えればそうなのだろう。
Not living in the present. It's a very interesting
こう
theme.
して幽霊を街に歩かせることでやっと正気を保っていられる我々を生きた人間だと言えるなら。
早く死にたいか。
I do wonder if that is commentary on modern life to a degree. It's also cool, this all of this looks like trees.
肉体を使う仕事をしてました。
それは羨ましいです。どんなお仕事？
列車の運転士です。
そうですか、運転士ですか。はい？
地下ルクスから列車が上がってきているようです。
誰が来るんでしょう？
おそらく武装したテクノライズド。
ほう、何をしに来るんでしょうかね。
多分我々を捕らえることとここに攻め入ることの先人として。
なるほどなるほど。いや、報告ありがとうございます。
Business as usual.
他に何か？
いいえ。
君、名前は？
一世。
名字は何というのかね？
ない。
ほう、それはいいね。人間は皆一人なのだ。わざわざ名前で縛られることもあるまい。君のような若い人を産んだご両親も私よりずっと若いのだろうね。
もういない。おふくろも親父も。
もう少しだ。辛抱なさい。コーヒーでも入れよう。
More human today. All of them.
なんだね。
あんたもルクスに来ればいい。少なくともルクスの人間は生きている。
そうだね。 そうか、行くのか。一星君、君がここにずっといてくれたら、そう思っただけだ。幽霊の世まいごとさ。
Same place every day.
駅まで行ってくれ。
さよなら、ルクス。どうするつもりだ？
I mean, did you think they'd stop?
まさか。
Alright, so what did they do? Did they blast through the door or? The modified soldiers.
空が高いな。だが違いなんてそれくらいですね。やっと着いたばかりだ。少し休ませてくれないですかね。
俺は帰る。
帰って何をするんです？誰か待ってるんですか？ガベの物見の女の子ですね。もう捕まった頃かな。カノさんが欲しがってね。あ、大西。もう少し利口な人かと思ってたな。オベリスクの下に潜り込むなんて。もう死んじゃってるんじゃないかな。
I mean, he ain't gonna lose. We know that. Alright, who saved us?
トンネルが潰された以上、カノさんも当分はこっちに兵を送ることはできない。僕もあなたも帰れないんです。
Ooh, okay, so he isn't a pawn. I was like, not okay. I didn't see that coming. Okay. So he's not in favor of Kano.
あなたを憎む気持ちもない。むしろあなたが好きだ。だから自分で殺したい。
Alright, dude, what?
そうか。俺もだ。
Kind of like Onishi and Shinji, right?
私が一世に惹かれたのは彼の瞳だった。私たちの親の親たち、ルクスに入植した最初の人々はみんなあの目を持っていた。だから地下へ追い込まれていった。恐ろしくてきちんと調べたことはないのだけれど、私が死を伝えていく能力を欠いているということについて、私は早くから確信を持っていた。
Okay.
テクノライズに私の細胞を培養したサーキットを付加したことで、テクノライズが一世にどれだけの力を与えるのか、
Okay.
私は見極めたいと思っていた。でも、もうそれも叶わない。
Some things do actually make sense.
楽しいです。本当に。こうやって本気で殺し合えるなんて幸せだ。
This false sense of like almost like honor or something. Not sure what his exact motives are here, but he definitely has a death wish to a degree. On the other hand, we do also have these tendencies to feel alive, right?
ありがとう。兄弟。
兄弟。I mean, I know it means brother, but if one of you has the exact translation, because it's not Aniki, right? Or Kyodai sounds more like a brother in spirit kind of deal, but I could be wrong there. The observers. What do they have to say to it? Oh, who are you?
来てよかったですよ。
Is that the councilman? And he does have.
あなたたちが地下に隔離されたのは、我々テオノーマルの安全のためでしたが、違
Paranormal.
う理由もあったかもしれないと考えています。
But he doesn't
テオ
know.
ノーマルはご覧のように主としての末期にある。どんなに危険な因子を排除しても滅びの日を待つばかり。次の種へ進化するという奇跡など起こらなかった。
Okay.
ひょっとしたら私たちの親の親の世代はあなたたちに望みを託した
Like the
のか
dog
もしれ
said,
ない。
right? With Techhnolyze.
想像でしかありませんが、
勝手だな。あんたたちも、あんたたちの親たちも。
A bit?
通風口の階段も落としました。もう地下の人はここに上がってこられないでしょう。あなたも。あなたはここに留まってほしい。勝手なお願いです。 階段は落とされたが、通風口自体は塞がれていない。
上等だ。
Alright, he wants to go down anyway. I mean, I kind of understand him, right? What really awaits him here? There's nothing here, at least,
あんた、
as of now.
俺、あんたに謝らなきゃならない。俺はずっと、おふくろが死んでからずっと、あんたが殺したと思ってた。あんたが砕 だらない金で汚れたと思ってた。あんたが薄汚い奴らにはめられたなんて、これっぽっちも想像しなかった。悪かったよ、親父。
I'm still not sure if that's happening in our head and if we should interpret that as everybody else who interacted with Ichise actually also not being real, right? And just being existing as ghosts, as actual ghosts, basically, right? It's relatively weird, right? Because everybody who came from down below isn't acting like that. And people like Yoshi, who were up there, seem to be alive enough. So how do you differentiate what is real and what is not if everything is drawn the same way and shown the same way? And this is the staircase that Yoshi came down with, right? Air shaft. I mean, obviously you would need large air shafts for Lucas. All right. I think I already said that, but I think like this song is actually from Ran's perspective rather than Ichise. And I could still be wrong about this, but it makes more sense because she keeps seeing him in like her visions. Because she's a seer and he is like a central person in the happenings around Lucas. Alright, I don't... I mean, we'll see, right? Decent amount to talk about. I do love some of the cinematography, like we start on this low light evening shot, right? Dim lighting, dingy hallway. We have like, we're looking from the ground up almost, and we're looking like down the hallway as he stands in front of one of the doors, but then we open to light and it's all like bright outside. So we go from somber darkness into like white blinding light, but not in a positive way, right? The way her shadow kind of casts these rays of the light that is hitting her, and her being like almost in fetal position and just like her back towards him and her eyes lowered and almost looking like a ghost already, right? Like all of the other people here who are like low resolution and have these weird shadows behind them. I mean, we used that trick before for Ran, but I think in this case it's something specific and more like more intentional on that very aspect that we've just highlighted the last two episodes. And see, she looks almost the same as him right here, right? She's accepting that fate, basically. Doc, I don't know, Doc. No one is alive here. Wait as the human species moves through its final days. This is Hades. And I do think, right, I'll look it up before the next reaction, but I do think Hades is the general term for the underworld, right? Like for the Greek underworld with all the different stages that exist within it, right? With like, I don't even know, Asphodel and Elysium and whatever. Probably only know that due to the game Hades. Love that like little Evangelion-esque shot of the fan and the wall. Really has end times written on it. And he's seeing Yoshi again. Yoshi and him, who apparently back then were already kind of aware and alive and whatnot. We don't know if anybody else around them was, but Yoshi and him were actually living beings, not ghosts in that sense. And they both kind of... He hesitated and was against it, but then volunteered to go down, and Yoshi himself went down on, I guess, on his own, on his like own initiative kind of deal. Yeah, all of these things with the ghosts, right? We have somebody running and suddenly they disappear out of his sight. Now obviously his eyes aren't artificial, so he shouldn't be relying on Techhnolyze, because you could explain that away. If his eye were like technologized and it was artificial, it would be like, oh, his eyes, like his technology up here, it doesn't work that way. But like all the Techhnolyze tech actually does is provide additional visual input for him, right? So I mean, I guess he could be potentially seeing the shadows of his own self, but I don't like, I mean, we talk later about how Ichi's like parents and grandparents were the ones who came down to Lucas, who were driven down to Lucas. But I don't think Ichi actually was on the surface at some point in his life. So him seeing that couldn't be him seeing himself, basically, in the past. So it could be the shadow of his father as a child, of course, right? If we have that information, kind of, but I don't know how the information syncing would work, because he's not connected to like the monument down there, which at the moment he only connects to himself and like his peripherals and I guess the dog cells that's in there, but I don't know how it works. And there's seemingly, like, I noticed that throughout the entire episode, that there seems to be an effect that Ichise has on people here, right? Or on the ghosts here. That as soon as he starts interacting with them and talking to them, they start to become less vanishing, right? Less invisible, less translucent, and more themselves. I don't mean that in a visual sense, though it could be in a visual sense as well, but I do mean that in a way that they actually show sanity, they interact, they show signs of being alive and self-aware, right? Like, not like the office worker that was in the earlier part of the episode, who just was not even interacting with our characters, where he was just like, oh yeah, that's fine, right? Or the person who was actually like the government person who was talking to them, who was like, yeah, whatever, right? If they come up here, it doesn't matter. But as soon as he starts to kind of talk to them, there's like this light that's kind of appearing inside of them, right? If we who barely hold on to our sanity by having our ghosts walk around can be called living humans. They are self-aware in that sense, and he's like, do you wanna die now? I don't know if this is the guy he interacts with later, right? Who's making the coffee and whatnot. I guess I would have to look that up. But yeah, and Sakimura-san, right? Sakimura interacting with people, and that just being like such a hollow interaction in general. Yeah, and this is like the device, and we immediately jump to that, so I feel like this guy might be that guy, but it looks a lot different, right? He looks a lot different from this guy. Brown eyes, but he has like the weird, like, hair flowing off a little bit, and he's dressed up differently. And later on we go here and he is like, there's not the little wings or anything, right? And his face looks slightly different, and I think like the eyes are more like a light brown, like a yellowish, right, sepia or something. So I don't know. You don't have to wait much longer. Be patient. Just thought if you could stay here forever. Foolish dream of a ghost or something that he says, right? But that's what I mean, right? Ichise interacts with people and suddenly they light up again, right? They almost like they desire not to be ghosts. And here we do see the two empty chairs, which sure as hell has some kind of meaning. I just don't know if I interpret it right. And it, like, the meaning of it is that these two started or stopped being ghosts and doing the same thing each day and started doing something different. And I do wonder if that is the reason why the other guy at the end of the episode actually wants Ichise to stay on the surface. But yeah, we ram into it, much to the dismay of Sakimura. Ichise arrives there to kind of maybe hold them off and go back himself because he wants to go back. But this is not what we're getting, actually. I don't know what his plans are. I forgot his name. But I don't know what his plans are. He seemingly is against Kano and he wants to have a warrior's death kind of deal. But I don't know why he betrayed Onishi and the rest originally, right? Why was that the case? Why did he kill the grandmothers for Kano? Was that just to sow chaos and to just like disassemble the ruling structure down there and just make sure that like change is happening? Or if that was just him, I don't know. I can't read into his emotions as much, right? I know there's a lot about like him being abused, right, by his father and also by the people who later on become his family in the Organo, basically. And I guess you could say a lot about like him wanting to establish control over his life by doing things like killing people, by doing things like betraying people if he thinks it's the right thing to do in a specific moment, or maybe also by wanting this fight head on with somebody that he genuinely respects and has sympathies for, right? Or by maybe dying by the hands of somebody who he actually likes, which would be Ichise in this case. Him sabotaging the tunnels and whatnot, did he do it for the people at the surface? I doubt it, because he didn't have contact with them. Did he do it for his selfish reasons? Probably. But what were his reasons? No idea. Great shot, by the way, through his like legs into like the smoke and him being like barely visible there, and the blade shining on his face. It's like, I rather like you. And now we have like something the doctor is talking about. By the way, I love this kind of imagery that is being shown here, mainly because like this room that the dog is in, it feels so much like these like early science fiction depictions of dystopian futures, right? I think of stuff like Asimov, right? Isaac Asimov, Caves of Steel, Naked Sun, Robots of Dawn, stuff like that, where you do have like a very interesting, unique color palette, right? It's very alive, right? The colors are very samey, right? But at the same time, you have a lot of different colors, right? The blue of the sky, you have a brown building here, a white building here, a red element here. You have the flowers, which have the green and the violet. You do have the curtains flowing in here. You do have even like a lighter brown sepia tone on the building on the left side through the window. Every surface has a different color, which is super interesting, and also just like it reminds you of a specific art style of like back then, the sci-fi original like older sci-fi novels. How the illustrators try to like convey that. It also reminds you maybe of Star Trek or something like that. Star Trek's design is a lot of like colors that pop, but that they're very samey on the same surface, but differentiate themselves from every other surface that is around them. There's a building of the dream. Let me actually see what she's saying here, because that's very important. What the first immigrants what attracted me to each was his eyes, right? Like, okay, his eyes are the eyes of our parents' parents. What the first immigrants to Lucas all had, right? Okay. That's why they were driven underground. I never had enough courage to go through proper testing, but I knew for sure early on that I lacked the ability to produce offspring. I was hoping to see how much power each Techhnolyze limbs would gain from the addition of my cells cultivating the biocircuit. Okay, a little bit of like science mumbo jumbo, but one thing makes a lot of sense to me, and that is for me that her being unable to create offspring kind of maybe partially drove this motivation for her to create some kind of grand life work, basically, in this Techhnolyze technology, right? Like to create her life's work, basically leave a legacy that is not an actual literal offspring. There could be more that we could put into that, where she's like my cells in his biocircuit and whatnot, but I think like that is kind of a little bit a stretch, even though maybe the undertones are there. I think the main thing is here her ambition to create like this technology, and to see, maybe also to see most of her subjects as kind of like almost her children, basically, when they get that technology, right? Onishi and Ichise here, where it's like, okay, I want to help them maybe become the next species, and that would also line up with his eyes drawing her in, being like those that originally came from Lucas and were driven down there, as we hear at the end of the episode by the guy who talks to Ichise. He says maybe the reason they were driven down there was that the hope was that they, with their Techhnolyze stuff and whatnot, they could actually be the future, right? The next evolutionary step, the people to save the people up here, which are apparently dying out, basically. Right. But that is no longer possible now. Does that mean she killed herself? She drowned herself or something? Because there's like a lot of water coming through like the bathroom door, and we don't see her on the bed anymore. I do hope she didn't just off herself here. That would be a shame, because she's a very important character. But I guess in a way she left her. Her mindset being, I'm already a ghost, which is very scary, right? That act of giving up. But also she doesn't have that emotionless acceptance, so the instinct would maybe be to end it quickly, right? Before she can't anymore, right? And becomes a complete husk, because she doesn't want that, right? Her emotions are rejecting that to a degree. Very fortunate that we can see Celia try to kill each other like this. Yeah, this has like some like wild Japanese samurai energy kind of deal, like the bad guy samurai who still kind of has this weird sense of honor and wants to have one last duel with the protagonist to actually get killed by somebody who is worthy of killing him, right? Something like that, right? That's the energy we have here. The cinematography is great, of course, like the flash to light, and then we have like the standoff and like the dropped blade and the gaze up and the thank you, and then like the blood gushing. And then we have like almost, this is like a bug coming out of a shell. I don't know if he's coming out. I mean, maybe that's a normal cicada. I don't know. Either way, we do have like this the symbolism of greenery and renewal and like nature-ish. Right, something is alive here. And we meet the dude who has been speaking all this time. I'm glad I came. And we do see these legs which are like stitched together in a way. It's almost like some of these olden like attractions that are holding the legs together, like Forrest Gump style, where you do have like you can't walk properly due to, I don't know, brittle bone disease or whatever it was. The reason your people were isolated underground was to protect us, the Theonormal. Theo, what does Theo mean in that case? Isn't Theo something related to religion or belief? And the second part of that is normal, right? I would more say like that this would be like something like abnormal or whatever, but maybe not. But I suspect there may have been another reason. As you can see, we, the Theonormal, as a species, are on the verge of extinction. You know, like again, flashing these flowers. No miracle happened that would evolve us into the next species. Evolve us into the next species. I don't know what he means with that, because evolution is normally a very slow process of like natural selection, right? So somebody dies and somebody else lives because of their superior genes or whatever, or because of other parameters, right? Like personality or whatnot that gets them to behave a certain way that makes it, well, I mean, that's partially genes too, but it's like an indirect effect of genes and environment and whatnot. But that leads them to actually have a more successful life, right? Mate with more members of their species, get more children, right? Like, and as a result of that, people who live less long obviously will have less chance to make children. People who have abilities and personalities and characteristics and skills that make them desirable obviously have a higher chance to get children. And as a result of that, over generations upon generations, certain genetic traits actually become the dominant ones, right? The ones that lead you one step closer to being more adapted to your environment. For example, the gene to split lactose, right? Like the milk sugar is a trait that developed over hundreds of years from people, especially like in Europe and whatnot, settling down and customarily providing, like having cattle that produces milk that then they would drink, right? So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people in the Americas and like Asia and whatnot don't have as much of that, right? Like why there's more widespread lactose intolerance, because lactose intolerance is the original default, right? And like being able to process lactose is actually a mutation in evolution in a way, an adaptation to the lifestyle that was practiced more on that continent specifically. So yeah, I mean, there's also, I think, tribes in Africa which are actually able to live with the AIDS virus without having any of like the autoimmune complications from that. So, right, go figure, that's an adaptation, that's a mutation in a way. So I don't know what he means specifically of like evolving into the next species, because like maybe they hope that some of their children were able to overcome these physical weaknesses that apparently is afflicting them, right? Be that, I don't know how that would, I mean, I guess those are maybe genetic flaws that they have, right? That humanity kind of has hit a dead end in the sense that they've gotten into a genetic corner basically that they can't get out of, because there's not enough people of their species that actually have these traits anymore, that actually have good dominant genes, I guess. Like dominant genes in the sense of like genes that are I mean, it's not necessarily dominant genes, because dominant genes just means that the gene, no matter if just the mother or just the father has the gene, or if both have it, in all of those cases, dominant genes would result in that ability to be expressed in the phenotype, right? In the actual physicality of the human being, right? So if you have, if a gene for, I don't know, for like strong bones is dominant, then that would mean that most of your species, actually, like most of your children, will have this gene, right? I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, obviously, because like something like the strength of bones would probably be a spectrum, right? It would be something like skin color, where there's like a lot of variations, because a multitude of genes are actually responsible for that, right? So that's the reason you don't just have two skin colors, you have like all kinds of skin colors, because like the genes for it are not one single gene, but different ones, right? And it's the same for a couple of other things. I think hair colors as well, right? So in a way, recessive genes, as the opposite of dominant genes, would be genes that only happen every few generations, because you would have to have a mother who has the gene and a father who has the gene, and them to actually for you to inherit those recessive genes, right? And not just that, I think, right? Like for mother and father, they would actually obviously give two pairs of genes to you, and then there's like whatever happens during, oh god, this has been so long since I had like biology of like conception and then like the genetic makeup of a human being, but I vaguely remember. Either way, right? I don't quite understand. I don't quite have the understanding that he seems to display here, where it's like, unfortunately, there was no next step in evolution. But like I said, maybe they hope that the children would actually, like their children, would eventually be able to overcome these problems, if they kind of just picked and chosen, maybe, or chosen, or maybe if they just checked everything, right, and then like made sure that those people who actually were fine were reproducing more or whatever. I do also not understand why protecting, like, because we're like, to protect them they were sent underground, but the question I do have on that is like, the people of Lucas, they don't seem to all lose limbs or whatever, right? They don't seem to all be weak or whatever, right? A lot of them seem to be very healthy and not rely on Techhnolyze technology. So the question is, what's the deal with that? We still don't have enough information to see why the theonormal are on the verge of extinction exactly, right? And what that has to do with sending them, like the Lucas people, down. So, despite our best efforts to eliminate dangerous elements, okay, we weren't able to delay our annihilation. No miracle happened that would evolve us into the next species. Maybe our parents' generation pinned their hopes on your people. Pinned their hopes on your people. To find a solution to it? But I know previously they actually needed raffia for stuff. But now, like, the government dude, for example, I don't know if it's him, said that they don't need raffia anymore, and it's just a formality. Because, like, the people with dominant genes will never have any, like, physical weaknesses, and those... And even if they did, why would they want to replace stuff with artificial limbs? So it's like, I don't know. What do you mean by that? Also, that's nothing more than my speculation. How selfish of you and your parents. How selfish to force a group of people down into the underground in isolation, and create this system of oppression in order to save yourselves. Yeah. even though Ichis clearly doesn't understand it either, I think. Like the specific details. But maybe the details don't matter. Selfish request of you to stay here. What would him staying here mean, right? And then we do have that last sequence, right, where we do walk and the Techhnolyze is kind of spazzing out, and suddenly he sees, like all the other people in the city displayed, his father. So I do wonder if we are supposed to interpret that as all the people who are in the city are actually not real. Maybe they exist in some kind of mainframe, or just within the memories of the Techhnolyze. But I don't know, right? Like, because a decent amount of them are supposedly real and interactable. So I don't know what to say to that, to be honest. If we even get like an explanation for that in the next 2 episodes. But yeah, that's it for Techhnolyze episode 20. I'll be seeing you next time for episode 21, and hopefully we're gonna close this out soon with episode 22 of Techhnolyze. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you to all the patrons. Thank you to Cardboard for sponsoring this entire series, and thank you also for all the master patrons, such as the Flaming Shark, for example, for supporting. I'll see you soon.